Toye ha. Tutse. Tumbaba. Transcript gum. Set. Tebe. Tebe. Dizude frenififico. The bezava e. Fedaba. Tama. The pe. Tebin. Tebun. 3 days after my stroke, my speech therapist had finally cleared me to use my phone. The message took me 4 minutes to type. Hey. Doctor says I can go home tomorrow. Can someone come get me? I'm at St. Francis on Delaney. My daughter read it at 2:04. I saw the little check mark turn blue. I waited. My son-in-law replied first. He always replied first when he thought there was something in it for him. Hey Hank, Candace and I are actually heading out to Sedona tomorrow morning. Booked it weeks ago. You know how it is. You'll be fine. The nurses will sort you out. I stared at that message for a long time. His name was Brandon. He had been married to my daughter for 6 years, and in 6 years he had called me Hank exactly twice. Both times he wanted money. My name is Harold. Harold Eugene Marsh. Candace sent her message 3 minutes after Brandon's. She must have been reading over his shoulder. Dad, the hotel is non-refundable. And honestly, you said yourself it was just a minor stroke. The doctors wouldn't be sending you home if it wasn't fine. My friend's aunt had one and she drove herself home from the hospital. L. You'll be okay. Law. My daughter put love after telling me to find my own way home from the hospital. I set the phone face down on the bleached out hospital blanket and looked up at the ceiling tiles. I was 68 years old. I had worked as a civil engineer for 31 years. I had built bridges, literally. I had designed drainage systems for 3 counties. I had paid for Candace's college tuition, her wedding, and the down payment on the house she now shared with Brandon in Scottsdale. I had put $40,000 in an account for any grandchildren that hadn't materialized yet, because Candace said she and Brandon needed more time, more space, more everything except responsibility. I had done all of that while raising her mostly alone after her mother, Patricia, died of a brain aneurysm when Candace was 11. I had been her mother and her father and her homework tutor and her soccer carpool and her prom dress picker-outer and her child at the altar. I had been everything. And she put LOL. The nurse who came to check my blood pressure was named Odessa. She was a heavy-set woman in her 50s with kind eyes and the kind of voice that made you feel like someone was paying attention. She looked at me, then at the phone on the blanket, then back at me. Your people coming tomorrow? She asked, wrapping the cuff around my arm. Something came up, I said, for them. She pumped the cuff. The pressure squeezed my bicep. She looked at the reading and made a small sound that wasn't quite disapproval, wasn't quite pity. It was something in between. Mr. Marsh, she said, pulling the Velcro loose, we have a patient advocate on staff. She can arrange medical transport. It's covered by your insurance. I don't need that, honey, she said. And she said it the way only certain women can say it. Like a warm hand on your back. It's not charity. It's your insurance you've been paying into for 30 years. Let us help. I told her I'd think about it. What I actually did was call my neighbor, Walt Greer, who was 71 and had 2 bad knees and no business driving on the highway. Walt said he'd be there at 9 the next morning and he'd bring donuts. I told him not to bring donuts. He said he was bringing donuts anyway. Walt showed up at 9:15 with a box of glazed from the place on Maple. He drove 35 miles an hour the entire way home with both hands on the wheel. And I loved him more in that 40-minute drive than I had loved most people in 40 years. My house was on the east side of Tucson, a single-story adobe-style place I had bought in 1994 when the neighborhood was still rough around the edges. I had refinished the floors myself, built the back deck with my own hands, planted the saguaro cactus in the front yard that was now taller than the roofline. It was paid off. It had been paid off for 3 years. It was mine, free and clear, same way I liked things. What I did not know until Walt pulled into the driveway and I stepped out of his truck was that something was different. The doormat was different. The old one had said welcome in faded letters. This one was dark gray with a geometric pattern. It looked expensive. I frowned at it. I reached for my key. The key didn't fit. I tried again. The lock cylinder felt stiff, unfamiliar, new. I stepped back and looked at the front door like it had said something offensive. Walt, I said. He was still getting out of the truck, grunting with his bad knee. Yeah? You seen anyone around my house while I was in the hospital? He squinted. That daughter of yours was here. Her and the husband. Day after you went in. At a moving truck. A moving truck. Small one. Like a U-Haul cargo van. I figured they were bringing you some things. I stood there on my own porch with a key that no longer worked, looking at a mat I had never bought, and I felt a cold clarity settle over me the way it does when the thing you've been refusing to believe finally sits down in front of you and clears its throat. I knocked. I knocked hard. 30 seconds. Nothing. I knocked again, louder, with the side of my fist. The door opened. Brandon was standing there in what appeared to be my bathrobe, the navy blue terry cloth one that Patricia had given me for Christmas 12 years ago. He looked surprised to see me, which told me that either he had a very short memory or a very long nerve. Hey, Hank, he said. You're back. I live here, I said. Why doesn't my key work? He scratched the back of his neck. Oh, yeah, we had a locksmith come out. There was a whole situation with the back window. We thought someone had been trying to break in, so we upgraded the locks. Security thing. We were going to give you the new key. When? Soon. We just hadn't gotten around to it yet. I looked at him in my robe in my doorway on my property. Brandon, I said quietly. Step aside. He stepped aside. I walked into my house. It did not look like my house. The furniture in the living room had been rearranged. The couch that had faced the window now faced the television. The bookshelf that held my engineering reference books and Patricia's paperback mysteries was against a different wall, and half the books were gone. In their place were decorative objects, a cluster of gold-tinted spheres, a driftwood sculpture, a ceramic vase that cost more than I wanted to think about and held no flowers. My reading chair, the brown leather one I had bought at an estate sale and had restuffed twice because I couldn't bear to replace it, was gone. In its place was a gray linen accent chair. It looked like furniture from a catalog. It looked like furniture from people who did not actually sit. Where is my chair? I asked. Brandon was trailing behind me. Oh, that old thing was falling apart. We had it hauled. Candace wanted to freshen up the space a little while you were. Where's my chair, Brandon? It's gone, man. It was basically garbage. I turned to look at him. He was wearing my robe and telling me my furniture was garbage. Candace came out of the kitchen. She was holding a coffee mug that I also didn't recognize, white with a logo from some resort. She looked healthy. She had clearly not spent the last 4 days worrying. Dad! She came toward me and hugged me, and I let her. Because you don't stop loving your child just because they've disappointed you. You just hold them differently. You hold them like something you know is breakable. You look good. How are you feeling? Where is my reading chair? She pulled back. Her expression did a quick calculation. We talked about refreshing the space. Nobody talked to me. Well, you were in the hospital. That's why nobody talked to me. She set the mug down on the coffee table, the glass-topped one that was also new. Dad. We were just trying to help. The house was looking tired. We wanted it to feel nicer for when you came home. It felt nicer to me before, I said. It felt like my house. She looked at Brandon. He shrugged in a way that said, I told you he'd be like this. The bedroom is ready for you, Candace said, her voice shifting to bright and brittle, the tone she used when she was managing me. We put fresh sheets on and everything. My bedroom or the guest room? A pause. Just a fraction of a second, but I caught it. We've been using your room while we've been here, she said, since it has the ensuite. But we set up the guest room really nicely. We bought a new mattress. You bought a new mattress for the guest room and moved into my bedroom. Data room, while I was having a stroke. You're making it sound? I'm making it sound like what it is, I said. I'm going to lie down. I walked past her. I walked down the hall to the guest room. It was clean, I'll give them that. The new mattress was firm. There were fresh towels folded on the dresser. There was a small succulent plant on the windowsill that had not been there before, which somehow made me sadder than all the rest of it. I sat on the edge of the bed. I did not lie down. I sat there and I listened to the sounds of my house, which no longer sounded quite like my house. I heard Brandon turn the television on in my living room. I heard Candace open the refrigerator. I heard the particular creak of my bedroom floorboard, the one I knew like my own heartbeat, as Brandon walked across it in whatever shoes he was wearing on whatever floor he had decided was his. I picked up my phone. I had one contact I needed. His name was Vincent Delacroix, and he had been my college roommate, my best man, and my attorney for 37 years. He was also the only person on earth who called me Harold, without it sounding like he was reading my name off a form. He answered on the second ring. "Harold, you're out." "I'm out," I said. "Vinny, I need to talk." Talk. I told him everything. The text message. The level. Walt and his donuts. The new mat. The new locks. The new furniture. The old chair that was gone. My bedroom, occupied. The guest room with its succulent and its mattress that was not mine. Vinny listened without interrupting, which was one of the things I had always loved about him. When I was done, he was quiet for a moment. "How's your head?" he asked. It was a real question, not a tactful one. "Clear," I said. "Maybe clearer than it's been in a while." "Good. Don't do anything dramatic tonight. Just rest. I'll come by tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock, and we'll talk about where things stand legally." "Where do things stand?" "It's your house, Harold. Paid off, in your name. You are the sole owner on the deed. They have no legal right to the bedroom or the furniture or the locks. But we do this right." I said I'd see him at 8. I did not sleep well. The mattress was too firm and the room smelled faintly of new plastic. I could hear them through the wall, talking, watching something, laughing at one point. I lay in the dark and I thought about Patricia. Patricia had died in this house. In our bedroom, which was now Brandon's. She had died in the spring with the windows open and the desert air coming through the screens, and her last conscious words to me had been, "Harold, the agave is blooming in the backyard." She had been so pleased about that agave. She had planted it herself, and it had taken 11 years to bloom. The agave was still there. I had made sure of that. It was one of the things I had managed to protect. I thought about the night we had bought this house. The realtor had left us alone in the empty living room for a few minutes, and Patricia had taken my hand and stood there in the bare space with her eyes closed. "I can hear it," she'd said. "Can you hear it?" "Hear what?" "The life we're going to have here." 23 years. That's the life we'd had there. And I had thought when she died that the house would die with her, that it would just be rooms, and instead, somehow, it had stayed alive. It had stayed mine. I had kept it going. I wasn't going to let it become theirs. Vinny arrived at 7:58 with coffee and a folder. He was a lean man, 70 years old, with white hair and the posture of someone who had never once slouched in a courtroom. He looked at the house the way he looked at contracts, professionally, without sentiment. We sat at the kitchen table. Candace and Brandon were still asleep. Their door was closed. "You have options," Vinny said, opening the folder. "The cleanest one is a formal notice to quit. They're occupying the property without a lease, which technically makes them tenants at will. You can revoke that status." "My own daughter." "Your own daughter," he confirmed, without flinching. "That doesn't change the law, Harold. It just makes it harder to enforce, practically speaking. You'd have to serve her. She'd have 30 days. "I don't want a family court battle," I said. "She's still my daughter." "Then what do you want?" I wrapped both hands around the coffee cup. "I want to know who they really are," I said. "I want to stop telling myself stories about it." "I've been telling myself stories for 6 years. Vinny looked at me for a moment. "Meaning?" "Meaning Brandon has borrowed money from me 4 times and paid it back twice, and I kept quiet about the other 2. "Meaning Candace told me the Sedona trip was non-refundable, and I want to know if that's true." "Meaning, I want to know if that's true." "Meaning I want to know what they talk about when I'm not in the room." "Harold, I'm not crazy, Vinny. I had a stroke. My speech tripped for a few days. My brain is fine." I set the cup down. "I want to set a trap." He looked at me across the table the way he had looked at me 40 years ago when I had wanted to represent myself in a property dispute, and he had talked me out of it. Except this time, he didn't say no. "What kind of trap?" he asked. I had been thinking about it since 3 in the morning. "I have an account they don't know about," I said. "A brokerage account, separate from the checking. I've been putting money into it for 20 years. It's got a little over $500,000 in it." Vinny raised an eyebrow. "How little?" "640,000. He was quiet for a moment. "And they don't know. They know I have savings. They don't know the amount. They've asked a few times. I paused. Brandon's asked. All right, Vinny said. Tell me the rest. I told him the rest. The plan, once I laid it out, was simple. The way strong things are simple. No unnecessary complexity. No moving parts that could break. It was load-bearing all the way through. I would let them believe the stroke had been worse than it was. I would present as slightly confused, occasionally forgetful, a little uncertain of dates and figures. I would ask Brandon to help me review my finances. I would suggest vaguely that I was thinking about getting my affairs in order while I was thinking clearly. I would mention the brokerage account, and then I would watch what they did with that information. Vinny had a colleague who did financial forensics. She could document any attempt to access my accounts. He himself could draw paperwork that would look official but be legally worthless, the kind of thing someone eager and careless might sign without reading. And he had a friend who ran a small video production company that did exactly the kind of quiet, high-quality documentation that held up in court. If they're just thoughtless, I said, we'll see that. And I'll have a hard conversation with Candace and it'll cost me something and I'll live with it. And if they're not just thoughtless, then I'll know that too. I had been an engineer for 31 years. My entire career was about understanding what something could bear before it broke. I was about to find out what my family was made of. I did not have to wait long. That afternoon, I mentioned the brokerage account. I sat in the living room in the gray linen chair I had not chosen, and I said in a slightly unfocused way that I had been meaning to simplify my finances, that having multiple accounts felt complicated now, that I wanted to get everything in one place where it was easier to manage. Brandon was in the room. He had his phone out, apparently checking something, but his hands went still. How many accounts are we talking? He asked, casual as tap water. Oh, a few, I said. The regular checking, the savings. And then there's the investment one. The one with the broker, Brandon repeated. Just like that, tasting it. Patricia set it up years ago, I said. I always meant to move it but never got around to it. It's gotten a bit large to manage alone. Brandon put his phone face down on the arm of the couch. How large is large? I looked at him with the expression of a man whose medication might be affecting his short-term recall. Oh, I don't remember exactly. It fluctuates. You know how markets are. Right, he said. Of course. He looked at the floor for a moment. Then he looked at me. You know, Hank, Candace and I have been talking about what happens going forward. With you and the house and your situation, we want to be here for you. Really here. Not just visits. That's kind, I said. We've actually been looking at some properties, he said, in this neighborhood, smaller places. We thought, maybe, if things got more complicated for you down the road, it might make sense for us to be close by. To help manage things. Manage things, I said. Your affairs. The house. The finances. Candace was saying, maybe you'd want a power of attorney, just in case. Something that lets us step in if you can't. I looked at him. That's very thoughtful, Brandon. He smiled. It was a careful smile. The smile of a man who thought he was closing a deal. Family takes care of family, he said. That night, after they had gone to bed, I called Vinny. Start the paperwork, I said, and call your video friend. How much time do you need? Give them a week, I said. Let them believe. The week unfolded slowly and with a terrible precision that I could not have predicted. I watched my daughter and her husband the way I used to watch a construction site in the early stages, looking for structural flaws before the concrete set. What I found was worse than I had imagined. Not dramatically worse. Quietly worse. The kind of worse that has clearly been going on for a long time. On the third day, I asked Brandon to help me log into the brokerage account online. I said the interface confused me. He sat down beside me at the kitchen table with barely contained eagerness and walked me through the login. I let him see the balance. I watched his face. The number was $643,000. He didn't react outwardly, but his breathing changed. The way a man's breathing changes when he sees something he wants very badly and is trying very hard not to show it. That's quite a bit, he said mildly. Is it? I said. Patricia always handled it. That night, behind my guest room wall, I heard him on the phone. I had left the monitor on. The small baby monitor that I had told them was a medical alert device, bought 3 days before at the hardware store on my way back from Vinny's. It sat on the dresser in my room, transmitting to the receiver in my bedside drawer. More than I thought he was saying, his voice pitched low but audible. A lot more. And she's the only heir. There's no one else. A pause. No, he's not as bad as she thought. He seems mostly there, but the stroke thing. Candace, if we get the POA in place before he changes his mind, we control the account. We don't have to wait. We can start moving things around. Just... Brandon, I heard Candace say. She was quieter. Stop. I'm just saying, I said stop. Her voice was flat, not horrified, not disgusted, just tired and impatient and not nearly horrified enough. She did not say, this is wrong. She did not say, that's my father. He just got out of the hospital. She said, stop. The way you say stop to someone who is about to spill a drink on the carpet. Manageable. Inconvenient. Not a moral failure. Just bad timing. I lay in the dark and I rearranged everything I had known about my daughter. On day 5, I overheard the conversation I had been waiting for. I had made an excuse to go to bed early, and they had settled into the living room not knowing I was sitting on the other side of the guest room wall with the monitor receiver in my hand. Brandon started it. He had clearly been marinating in something all day. She needs to be the executor, he said. Not just a beneficiary. If she's the executor, she controls the timeline. She controls what gets liquidated and when. He might not go for it, Candace said. He will if you ask him the right way. You're his daughter. He can't say no to you. A silence. The house alone is worth $350 minimum, Brandon said. Maybe $400 in this market. Plus the account. That's over $1 million, Candace. You understand that? We would never have to work again. He's not dead, Brandon. I know he's not dead. I'm just being practical. He had a stroke. He's 68. These things compound. We should be positioned. Positioned. Yes. Another silence. Longer. Okay, Candace said. I'll talk to him tomorrow. I put the receiver down on the nightstand. I looked at the ceiling. I was quiet for a long time. I thought about Candace at 11, standing in a black dress at Patricia's funeral, holding my hand so hard my fingers had gone numb. I thought about her college graduation, the way she had looked for my face in the crowd and found it and smiled. I thought about walking her down the aisle, her arm in mine, that particular weight of her leaning into me. I had given her everything, not to get something back. I understood that parenting wasn't a transaction, but I had assumed, somewhere below the level of conscious thought, that the person I had raised would have a floor, a place past which she would not go. She had gone past it. I called Vinny at 6 in the morning. It's time, I said. How fast can you move? Define fast. The week is up, then I can move today. He came at noon with his paralegal, a brisk woman named Teresa who carried a briefcase that looked like it could survive a plane crash. They sat at the kitchen table. I had asked Candace and Brandon to be there. I had told them I was ready to discuss the estate planning. They were dressed nicely. Brandon had shaved. Candace was wearing a blazer. They had prepared. I appreciate you both being here, Vinny began, spreading papers on the table. Harold asked me to walk through some of the documents he's been considering. There are a few things that need to be addressed. Of course, Brandon said, leaning forward. The first is the house, Vinny said. Harold has decided to transfer ownership. Brandon and Candace both straightened. I watched their faces. He's going to deed it to a trust, Vinny continued. The Patricia Marsh Educational Trust, named for Harold's late wife. It will fund scholarships for first-generation college students pursuing engineering or related fields. A beat. The house, Brandon said carefully. Will be sold, I said, after I move out. I've arranged to lease an apartment downtown. A nice one. 1 bedroom, 14th floor, looks out over the city. I think Pat would have liked it. You're selling the house, Candace said. Her voice was strange. Stretched thin. The proceeds go to the trust, I said. Yes. But... She stopped. Started again. What about us? What about you? We were planning. She looked at Brandon, then back at me. We thought we'd be able to... To what? I asked. Not unkindly. Genuinely. She couldn't finish the sentence. Because finishing it meant saying the part out loud, the part that had only existed in private, in low voices behind guest room walls. And the brokerage account? Brandon asked. He could not help himself. Has been restructured, Vinny said. It's now held in Harold's name in a different institution with a designated charitable beneficiary. We completed the transfer this morning. Brandon's jaw tightened. Is this because of something we did? I looked at him. I looked at my daughter. They were both looking at me, and in their faces I could see the exact calculation happening, the counting up of what had been said and what had been overheard and what might have been seen or recorded. I want to show you something, I said. Teresa opened the briefcase and produced a small laptop. She set it on the table and turned it toward them. On the screen was a video window, paused. This is from a monitor in the guest room, I said. I set it up because my doctor recommended I document my recovery. The audio is clear. I saw the color leave Candace's face. I pressed play. I let it run for 45 seconds. Brandon's voice filled the kitchen. We don't have to wait. We can start moving things around. And then Candace, not horrified, just stop. I closed the laptop. I'm not going to the police, I said. I'm not going to drag this into court. You're my daughter. I don't want that for either of us. I kept my voice even, but I want you to hear me say clearly that I know. I know what was planned. I know what you were waiting for, and I want you to know that the only reason I didn't see it sooner is because I didn't want to. Candace was crying. Real tears, I thought, but I could no longer be certain what was real with her, and that was the loss underneath the loss, the thing that would take the longest to mourn. Dad, she said. You need to pack your things, I said. Both of you. I'd like you out by Friday. Brandon stood up. He did not look at me. He walked out of the kitchen, and I heard the bedroom door close, and then I heard him on the phone, and I understood there would probably be some kind of argument from a lawyer, and Vinny would handle it, and it would cost me something, and I would live with that too. Candace sat at the table for a long moment. She wasn't looking at me. She was looking at the place on the table where her hands were folded. I'm sorry, she said finally. I know, I said. And I did know. I said. And I did know. I just didn't know yet whether sorry was enough, or what enough even looked like from here. That was the work that was still ahead of us. The slow, uncertain work of figuring out if something broken could be rebuilt into a different shape. Not the same shape. A different one. The agave in the backyard, I said. She looked up. Your mother planted it. I want you to know that. Before you go, she nodded. She was crying again, or still. I got up from the table. I walked down the hall to my bedroom door. I knocked, which felt strange, but felt right. Brandon, I said through the door. I need the robe back. There was a silence. Then the door opened. He was wearing his own clothes. He handed me the robe without making eye contact and walked past me down the hall. He didn't look back. I went into my bedroom. My bedroom. I smoothed my hand across the comforter, which was theirs, and would be leaving with them. The room smelled wrong, but underneath that, faintly, if I concentrated, I could almost find the room I remembered. The window that let in the morning light. The particular way the afternoon shadows crossed the floor. I stood by the window and looked out at the backyard. The agave was tall and green, and exactly where Patricia had put it. 3 months later, I am in a different kind of quiet. The apartment is on the 14th floor, and in the mornings, the light comes in off the mountains and sits on the kitchen table while I drink my coffee. I have one chair, a good one, leather, deep-seated, bought from a furniture maker on the east side who builds things by hand. I had it made exactly the way I wanted it. No one else chose it. Walt comes on Tuesdays. We play chess badly and argue about baseball. And he still brings donuts that I tell him not to bring. I eat one every time. Vinny set up the trust in Patricia's name. The first scholarship went to a young man from South Tucson, 22 years old, first in his family to finish high school, starting a civil engineering program in September. He came to meet me in person. He had a handshake like a man who had been working since he was 14, which he had. I told him about load-bearing structures, about how the math has to hold before you pour the concrete. He listened the way young people listen when they actually want to know something, leaning forward, not on their phone. Patricia would have liked him very much. Candace and I talk on the phone every few weeks. It is careful and strange and sometimes feels like learning a language neither of us knows yet. She has left Brandon. She did not tell me why exactly, and I did not push. Some things need to be said when the person is ready and not before. She said on our last call that she was sorry. Not the same sorry as the kitchen table. A different one. Slower. Like something she'd been working toward. I keep thinking about the things I said, she said. The Loval. I actually said Loval. I actually said Loval, Dad. You did, I said. A long pause. Were you scared? She asked. In the hospital. When nobody came, I thought about that for a moment. About the ceiling tiles, and Odessa with the blood pressure cuff, and Walt showing up with his bad knees and his box of glazed donuts. I said. For a little while. I'm sorry. I know. Do you think... She stopped. Is there a way back from something like this? For us? I thought about bridges. About how they are designed not just to hold weight, but to flex. To bend under load without breaking. The ones that cannot flex or the ones that come down. I don't know yet, I said honestly. But I'm not saying no. That's where we are. Not restored. Not destroyed. Not destroyed. Somewhere in the flexing middle, holding weight, finding out what holds. I put the phone down and looked out at the mountain light. My coffee had gone cold, but I drank it anyway. I've gotten particular about some things and relaxed about others. Which is, I think, the reasonable adjustment of a man who has recently discovered what matters. The agave in the old backyard bloomed last week. The new owners sent me a photo. They didn't have to do that, and I told them so. They said they'd read about the trust online and had looked up what the agave meant in the article about Patricia. They said they wanted me to know it was still there. I thanked them. I set the phone down. I sat in my leather chair in the quiet apartment on the 14th floor, and I thought about all the things that are still standing. There are more than I expected, more than I deserved, maybe, and more, I think, than I'm done building yet. I've had a lot of time to think about how things unfolded with Candace and Brandon. Not to rehash it, not to keep poking at the wound, but because I'm an engineer by training, and I can't help looking for the load-bearing moment, the point where the structure was already compromised, even if nothing had visibly cracked yet. I think the law was that moment. Not because one word destroyed a relationship, but because of what it revealed had already been true for a long time. People don't reach for cruelty that casually unless cruelty has become comfortable. That kind of ease takes years to develop. I had just been too willing to look past the smaller signs to see the direction things were heading. That's the part I have to sit with. I was not a passive victim in this story. I made choices. I told myself that Candace needed more time to grow up. I told myself that Brandon was difficult but ultimately harmless. I kept my accounts private, and my concerns private, and my hurt private. And I called all of it discretion when a lot of it was just avoidance. The truth is that I had enough information to see what was happening years before I ended up alone in a hospital room waiting for a ride that never came. I chose not to see it because seeing it meant doing something about it. And doing something about it meant accepting a grief I wasn't ready for. What I know now, sitting 14 floors up with good coffee and a chair I picked out myself, is that the universe does not wait for you to be ready. It doesn't send polite warnings. It just keeps sending the same lesson in larger and larger envelopes until you finally open one. The cause and the effect were always connected. Every time I covered for Brandon's carelessness, I taught him he didn't have to be careful. Every time I quietly absorbed Candace's indifference, I taught her the indifference had no cost. I was the one setting the terms, even when I thought I was just being forgiving. That's not a comfortable thing to admit. But it's true. What saved me in the end wasn't cleverness. It wasn't the recordings or Vinny's paperwork or the trust in Patricia's name, though all of those things mattered practically. What saved me was deciding, finally, that I was worth protecting, that the life I had built and the work I had done and the man I still was at 68 deserved to be treated with basic dignity. And that if the people I loved most could not offer that, then I had to create it for myself. That's not hardness. I want to be clear about that. It's not bitterness. I still talk to Candace. I'm still her father. I held her hand at her mother's funeral when she was 11 years old, and that does not go away. But holding someone's hand through grief is different from handing them your life and hoping they'll be careful with it. I confused the two for a long time. The young man who got the first Patricia Marsh scholarship called me last week. He had just passed his first structural analysis exam. He was so excited he could barely get the words out. I told him what my old professor told me. The math has to be honest before you build anything. You cannot fudge the numbers and expect the bridge to hold. He laughed. He said he'd remember that. I think I'll remember it too. For whatever years I have left, I'm going to be honest about the math. I'm going to build things that actually hold. And I'm going to stop calling avoidance by kinder names.